guys, we got massive bullish news. We're going to talk about earnings expectations and also what the NIO CEO said, which is also very, very, very bullish. So first of all, let's talk about the big news that the CEO said, and that is the fact that the Envoy L80 will be delayed. And this is bullish because he said there's too much demand for the Envoy L90 and they share the same manufacturing lines. That means for every Envoy L80 produced, you have to not produce an Envoy L90. And since there's so much demand for the Envoy L90, you can't even keep up with demand for the Envoy L90. There's no point in launching the Envoy L80 this year, which is just going to, take up deliveries. And that just doesn't make sense. When you can sell the more expensive product with better margins, you should do that instead of selling the cheaper product. And of course, he gave a specific timeline. He said this year we will not be delivering the Envoy L80. But he left the possibility that they might announce the car this year. Okay, so they possibly might announce the Envoy L80 this year, but it's guaranteed that they will not deliver the Envoy L80 this year. Next year is when they will start deliveries of that car, which is very bullish. It shows that Envoy L90 is just super rocket high demand, man. So they're going to pump out that car. It doesn't make sense to, sacrifice sales of the Envoy L90 for Envoy L80. So that's the big news number one. The big news number two is, of course, the fact that we have now, according to people in the know, record number of orders, locked in orders. This does not include the ES8, guys. Okay, locked in orders, record number of monthly orders, and NIO has gained the number one top spot of the new energy vehicles makers here in China. So in August, NIO has received so far 57,000 total locked in orders. All right, and of that, 15,000 comes from NIO and 40,000 comes from Envoy. Remember, the Envoy L90 locked in orders, lots of them, but also thanks to the popularity of the Envoy L90, that has brought more attention to the Envoy L60, which has also saw record 30% increase compared to last month. So that's very impressive. And the Firefly, 2,000 orders for the Firefly car. They also released some limited edition Firefly models, basically different decals on the car, and those got sold out instantly. So very, very impressive. Compared to the competitors, so NIO with 57,000, Leap Motor at number 2 spot with 56,000. So, NIO's doing better than Leap Motor. Li Auto with 46,000, and of that, the i8 only has 16,000 orders. So not too impressive, Xiaomi has 38,000, Xpeng 37,000, Ito 26,000. So NIO is at the top of the food chain now. Very nice. Thanks to Envoy L90, the ES8, and of course the new price cuts. All right, and this doesn't even include the ES8 orders. The ES8 orders are soft orders. We're talking about locked in orders. Okay. So that's also very, very impressive. Now let's talk about earnings expectations in 2 days. On Tuesday, they're going to have earnings. And this is, of course, for Q2 earnings. And what's my expectations for this earnings report? So let's first make it clear they are still on track for profitability in Q4, which is very, very nice. However, that does mean that they have to cut off a lot of the excess, and they have to do that in Q2 and Q3. And that also means you have things like severance pay, right? You're cutting off all the staff. You got to pay them N+3. N represents the number of years that they've worked here, plus 3 months of salary. So if somebody's worked at NIO for 5 years and then you're firing them, you got to pay them 5 plus 3, which is 8 months of salary. That's a lot just to get rid of them. So, of course, they will incur that expense in Q2 or Q3. And also, they're closing down a lot of stores, unprofitable stores, which is a very good decision. But with that, there's also contract violation fees. You're renting this for a long period of time and you decide to close the store, then you kind of you got to pay a penalty for that. And also, if you want to take apart a store, you have to tear down the renovation and everything. And that also costs money. And the new house that's closing at the end of this month that I went to before, they told me that, just tearing down the renovation cost as much as one car itself. So, that's it does add up, right? That's an expense that nobody wants to pay, but they have to incur it. And, that does happen in Q2 and Q3. Also, there's factory number 3, being built, and of course, expenses for that is going to be in Q2 and Q3. So they're trying to front load all the expenses to Q2 and Q3 so that they can be profitable in Q4, and it makes a lot of sense. Okay, but what about the specific number that we're looking at? So I think if we get losses at around 500 million or less per quarter. Remember, NIO has on average 700 million plus US dollars in losses per quarter. All right, absolutely staggering amount. But if we see a drop in losses, all right, 500 million and less, that's very bullish. That's super, super bullish, and I will be super satisfied to see that happen. And man, I would not be surprised to see a positive reaction in the stock price. Investors see that losses are decreasing. They are on track. The trajectory is indeed profitability in Q4. Then boy, oh boy, yeah, the stock price is going to see some explosive action. Okay. But on the flip side, there is also still the possibility, because of all these expenses that they're incurring, R&D expenses, etc., that we might still see like 700 million or even higher losses in Q2. So it's absolutely possible, right? I think that personally, because in previous earnings report, NIO CEO has said that in Q2 we're going to see about like maybe 20% of the of the result of cost cutting. So that means that we can expect somewhere around that ballpark of 20% improvement in losses, perhaps, maybe. So, that could mean we can get maybe 500 million or less in losses. I would be very happy to see that number. And of course, guidance is very important. I think if they comment on the future outlook of how many, they don't really guide for deliveries in a sense, but they do have the end of the year target. Are they still on track for the end of the year target? Because that's very ambitious. They got to deliver 55,000 vehicles per month to reach the end of the year target. And in this video, you saw they do have the corresponding amount of orders, which is very nice. But are they still on track from management's perspective to achieve that delivery target by the end of this year? If they do some downward adjustment to the guidance, yeah, that's not great. But if they say they're on track to, achieve their delivery target for the end of this year, then that will be extremely, extremely bullish as well. So personally, I think whatever the number is for the losses in earnings report, I wouldn't be too worried, because I know that they are on track for profitability in Q4. So I am very optimistic that it will happen. Okay? As always, stay safe, stay healthy. Peace out.